Well, good morning, Facebook, Instagram, returning TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, whatever app that you see this video on. I want to say good morning to you. And I have something that I really want to focus on as far as for this conversation. One of my main focuses today, of course, we had the inauguration today. Well, actually, it was yesterday because right now it is pretty much early Tuesday morning when I'm recording this. But we have a new president, one that we've had before, and I'm curious to see how things will go because already instantly I'm seeing some changes. And I won't say whether I feel like they are good or bad. I see definitely some changes. Now, that's for a whole nother conversation. What I really wanted to focus on today is I know a lot of people talk about this guy. His name is Charleston White. He has a very blunt way of expressing himself and the way he speaks about other individuals. So there was a video I watched earlier, I want to say probably about an hour, maybe 2 hours ago when I was in the gym. Because what I usually do, I go to the gym, I work out, and then I also take the time to work on my craft, which is graphic design. So that's kind of like a twofold thing. Like I work out my mind, my body, and then I go and as I'm kind of allowing, because I usually take a shower at the gym. And I know, especially when it's cold, you don't want to hop right out in that cold air when your pores are open. So my mom taught me that. So usually that's another reason why I kind of like after the gym, I'll sit there in the gym and work on my computer for a good 30 minutes to an hour, depending on like how in depth I'm wanting to work on stuff. But it helps to kind of protect me and give my pores a chance to kind of close back up, and then I'm good to go. So I say all that to say the conversation was very interesting. Now you can go find it on YouTube. You can hear the conversation for yourself. But I'll later on post on Facebook when I find a link for his actual full interview. And then I'll post a link for the interview that I looked at because it was actually a young lady whose YouTube channel I follow. Her name is Dee, and she was reacting to the interview that he did. So I know I've kind of laid the groundwork, but the main thing I want to focus on is that he said some very controversial things. And I know in our community as Black people, because I am of African American descent, to be honest with you, let's just be real. I have majority of my heritage is Black, African American. I also have Caucasian in my family, and I also have Native American, actually Cherokee to be exact. So I have all of that within my family. Now, in this video, he talked about how back in, I want to say the 50s and 60s, like the 1950s and 1960s, blacks were up here at the top. Like we were, as far as like, I'm not saying like as far as having money and things of that nature, because, you know, when we came here as slaves, we had to struggle just to get what we could get. But what he was saying is back then, we were so adamant about making a space for ourselves, considering the fact that we were brought here as slaves. When we got our freedom, at first we weren't sure of what to do being on our own. But once we got to the point of learning how to create our own wealth, and I remember they talked about it, and I want to do more research on it, but I remember there was a whole city that was like a black utopia, like where they had a black bank, black everything. Everything was black owned. And the sad part is that place thrived for a while, but unfortunately, it was burned down. And I want to do research on it, so don't quote me on this, but I want to say, unfortunately, the other race that brought us here as slaves did not like seeing us prosper and have our own, and they burnt it down. But that's a whole other situation or a conversation. But what I wanted to focus on is that he was saying that nowadays we are the laziest. We are not the brightest. He said another way, but I'm just trying to say it. I'm trying to PG it right now. And he also said that we have a attitude of we feel like we are entitled to things. He also said that on the job, we are the ones that are usually not really putting in the most effort compared to some of our other coworkers. And there was a couple other, and he talked about financial, basically generational wealth. And yeah, I would say out of all of those topics, he hit the nail on the head on about 90% of those topics. So let's talk about it. Now, the main one I wanted to talk about is the generational wealth. Yeah, it's sad to look at how people of other races leave a legacy for their kids, their grandkids, their great-grands, sometimes up to the fourth generation. But I'm not saying all black people, but a lot of us black people don't do it. You'll notice a lot of black people, when they become rich, the rich ones actually do leave something for their kids. The ones that I would say are more like middle class, they just make sure that they have enough to enjoy themselves while they're alive, enough for retirement, and they may leave their kids a little something, but it's not really anything significant. I mean, it's enough to maybe help their kids pay their funeral fees. And I mean, like, the money that the parents leave for their kids, middle class wise, it's enough where maybe that those parents had the wisdom to have their own life insurance policies. So when that day comes, when they pass away, their insurance policy will cover the funeral and all of that stuff, but they may leave their kids a little something that will maybe help them put something towards paying off their home, or maybe allow them to do something like that. But it's not like one of those, it's not like a trust, or it's not a leaving their kids a whole company to run or things of that nature. That's what I mean, like real generational wealth, where when you pass away, you're not worried because you left your kid a business to run that's making money, or you left your kid some property. You left your kid, let's just say $2 million that's in a trust, and they can only touch it once they get to a certain age. But that's what I'm saying. That's the generational wealth that a lot of these other races do. And they have been taught this from a young age. And I always say, unfortunately, we as black people, our parents did not learn these things. And then if they didn't teach it to us, we didn't learn it. But one thing I will say, and I thank God for my God sister, I thank God for some of the other people in my life that, like, I had a mentor when I was in college. He even made some suggestions to the things that I started to learn about financial literacy and learning about generational wealth and things of that nature, because I looked at his life and what he was doing for his kids. And yeah, my mentor in college was a Caucasian man, a really nice Caucasian man. But the interesting thing was, he was Caucasian, but his wife was actually, she was Cuban. And so it was interesting that he ended up marrying not someone of his own race, but his wife was actually Cuban. And of course, his kids would now, going forward in life, would be half white, half Cuban. So it was very interesting. But he was really a nice guy. And what I learned from him was some of the things that my father wasn't able to teach me. And not to say that my father taught me a lot, and he's still teaching me things. But one of the things that I will say, my dad is the type that would be considered in that middle class, where when he passes away, he probably would leave. I know my dad has an insurance policy, so I'm quite sure when he passes away, he's not going to leave a lot of weight. Like, let's say if he passed away before my mom, I know my father. He's the type of good man that would make sure that my mom would have to worry about anything. My dad's funeral stuff would be covered. Even if my dad didn't have enough money for that, me, my sister, and my brother, we would all get together, make sure that it's covered. My mom wouldn't have to worry about anything. But I'm saying, like, I know my father, and I know he is he has financial literacy to the point where I know when the day comes when he passes away, I'm quite sure the house that they live in will be paid off. The car that he's driving will be paid off. And he will have to basically leave my mom no real stress about anything. Everything will be taken care of. And then at that point, that'll be a decision that will be made between me, my sister, and my brother to decide on whether we would want our mom to be there by herself or whether she would move in with one of us. But that's a whole other thing. But what I wanted to focus on is the other group that seems to be more prominent, which is our group that will be considered poor, which you have individuals, and I can even attest to having friends like this. I had a friend, I'm not going to mention the name, but he grew up with humble beginnings. It was him, and he had 4 brothers, grew up in a single mother household, and it was basically his mother and grandmother raising him and his 4 brothers. They grew up poor, and today he's pretty successful, I would say. But the thing that I noticed is, and this is what I'm trying to say, this is like the main point I want to make. He has this kind of attitude where he basically has become arrogant. And it's unfortunate, because what ends up happening is that when some of us have humble beginnings, when we were like really, really struggling to come up, and then when we make it, instead of us remembering our past and maybe being a little bit more humble about it, and maybe being more forthcoming to others that are struggling, maybe we could teach them a few things. But instead of him graciously teaching, he's more of like beating these people down. And he wonders why nobody wants to listen to him. And I'm gonna just be real. His wife don't want to listen to him. His kids don't want to listen to him. And even with me and him, we're not on the best of terms as far as speaking at currently, because when I came to him with a few financial questions, because like I said, he's very financially literate. He has investments. He has his own home. He was able to buy a new vehicle for his wife, cash, things like that. And you're like, okay, well, let me ask him some advice. But the funny thing is, when I went to ask him for advice, instead of him just kind of, you know, explaining to me a situation, he talked down to me, made me feel stupid, just basically raked me over the coals. And I'm sitting here like, really? And it was so funny that me and this person used to do Bible study together. And I remember we would do a Bible study, and then we would actually share maybe some prayer requests. And one of his requests was that he wanted to get better at being able to speak to his wife, because I think his wife would express her feelings of when she speaks to him about a situation, and when he responds, he makes her feel stupid. And he had just mentioned that a week ago, and we prayed over it. And of course, you know, I know change doesn't come overnight, and it doesn't, sometimes change can take years, months, but it was so funny, and I felt like it was so on time that when we had a heated debate, because I really did not appreciate the way that he was speaking to me, and it got so heated that he hung up on me. And then when I texted him, he almost was like, I'm about to end this friendship. And I told him, wait, hold on, look at what you're doing. And I said, does it seem familiar that you're basically treating me like you said your wife feels like you treat her? And then the light bulb went off. And I mean, unfortunately, to this day, I feel like he's still hurt that I had to shine the light on something he was doing. But that's the thing that I don't get. When he put my feet to the fire, when he had many times before told me about things that I wasn't doing right, I took those licks and I got better. But it's so funny how somebody is very comfortable pointing out your flaws, but when you point back at something they're dealing with, oh, now they want to end the friendship. And that's not right. Because let's look at the scripture. The scripture says, iron sharpeneth iron. And I don't want to misquote the rest of that scripture. I would actually post it later, so you'll have the full scripture. But mainly what that scripture, as far as my interpretation, I'm just speaking on what I feel that the scripture is really talking about. It's saying that you're able to hold your brethren accountable. You should be able to have somebody in your life that you can hold each other accountable. And when you see your brother falling off, they should have you both should have a relationship to where you can, and you don't have to tear them down, but you could warn them like, hey, I don't know if you might want to do that, but there's a way to give someone constructive criticism in love. And I feel like that's the thing that we have to get better at. We tend to give constructive criticism, but we don't do it with love. We do it with almost like I'm picking at you. Ooh, look at you. Look what you just did. We make the person feel ashamed instead of more like, hey, man, you know, I would just advise you. I don't know if you might want to do that, or I noticed that you're kind of falling off. You're not doing the things that you used to do to get the results that you used to get. And a lot of messages, it's all about delivery. And I think sometimes we have to work on our delivery. And that was actually my suggestion to him, even though to this day, unfortunately, we don't speak anymore. But my last suggestion to him was work on your delivery, because the information that you're giving is great, but the way you're delivering it to a person, they're not even listening, because you've already torn them down and made them feel like they're silly, they're stupid, they don't know anything. And who will listen to you if you continue to tear them down? Nobody. Think about it. If somebody's constantly trying to give you advice, But before they give you that advice, they tell you about how you're the stupidest person ever. You don't know what you're doing. I don't even know why I'm giving you this advice. But here is the advice. At that point, you're not even listening anymore. You basically just shut down. So I don't want to make this too long. But the main thing that I wanted to talk about, or at least end this on, is that I agree with Charleston White. I feel like we as a people, we have a focus on the right now money instead of long-term money. And I feel like that's how other races create generational wealth compared to us. When we get the resources to create generational wealth, we don't focus on the future. We focus on the now. We go buy the luxury car. We go buy the mansion. We go buy the Louis Vuitton. We go buy all the J's in the world. We go ball out. And we make sure that we can afford to pay for all that stuff. And we make sure we can do, but we're not thinking about, let me maybe get the Acura or the Honda or the Chevy or the Nissan instead of getting the Maserati, instead of getting the Audi, or instead of getting the BMW. I mean, I have to even reprimand myself because I went out there in my younger years and got an Audi knowing I couldn't afford it. But I say all that to say, most of the time that we're doing these things because we're seeing other people of our same color do the same. And there's one or two reasons. We either want to be like that person, or we're jealous of that person and we want to do something like them or better than them so we can outshine them. And I think that's the bad thing that's the place that we're in, and it continues to keep us where we are. We're not making the progress we should be making. Think about this. One other thing I want to say, and I promise I'm going to end it here. Charleston White gave the example of 5 fingers. So let's just say we got Jay-Z making billions. We got Tyler Perry making billions. We got, athletes making billions. So we got all of these people making billions, but think about this. If somebody was to come and rip my finger, it would break. But if we fold those fingers into a fist, which means we come together, it's harder for you to try to break this finger. That was a great point that he made, which, for example, he was saying how you see Donald Trump and Elon Musk have come together. Other races, they come together. And for a great example, and I'm not trying to be racist, but I'm just saying it's the truth. Asian races, they will live slumly in an apartment, like 20 people all in one apartment. I might be over exaggerating, but it's true. They would do that for a few years. And then once their business takes off, once they're making great money, they all will move out to their own places, get their luxury cars, and start their generational wealth for the next generation. I was blown away when I learned about this. And I thought to myself, imagine if right out of college, if I could have got maybe 2 or 3 of my friends that I could trust, we all went out and got a condo together or a townhome, made sure that it was enough room for all of us, maybe like a 4-bedroom, 3-bedroom, everybody had their own individual room. But what I'm focusing on is the 3 of us splitting that rent, which will make it much easier for all of us. We're not wasting money on apartments. And then once life starts happening, once we get married, what we would do is agree upon a time frame to sell that place, split the profits evenly, and then move forward. I remember I didn't come up with that. Actually, my pastor that I used to be under here in Orlando, he mentioned that, and I was like, man, I wish I would have thought of something like that when I was his age, because he was actually 4 years younger than me. And I thought to myself, imagine where I could be now if I would have had an idea like that and actually had some friends that I could trust like that. But I say all that to say, I pray one day we stop competing with each other. We stop trying to kill each other because we want what the other person has. But if we could ever be like that group of people back in the Bible when they were all of one language and they all of one mind and one focus, they wanted to build a tower to heaven. And if not for God stopping them, they could have accomplished it. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I know that we don't want to admit it, but if we could ever get all on the same page, and if we could ever get back to the place where we're not competing with each other and we're not allowing other races to pit us against each other, imagine where we could be. Think about that. Thank you for your time. I'm sorry this one ran a little longer than I wanted to, but I really wanted to focus on some things that we should start thinking about in this new year with this new president, with things that are going to change. There's a lot of changes coming, and I just say, just be prayed up. Take care of yourself. May God bless you, and thank you again.